T-Tube News Today. T-Tube is the voice for the voiceless. Subscribe, comment and share our channel. Today news headlines. U.S. sounds alarm over reports of possible ethnic cleansing in Tigray. Reports of mass atrocities in western Tigray. April 8, 2022 press statement. Ned Price, Department spokesperson. U.S. sounds alarm over reports of possible ethnic cleansing in Tigray. The United States joined a chorus of international groups and countries raising the alarm about possible ethnic cleansing transpiring in the Tigray Ethiopian government conflict. The State Department expressed grave concerns Friday about reports of ethnically motivated atrocities from Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International and urged both sides of the conflict to cease hostilities against each other. Is Ethiopia the new Syria? The United States reiterates its grave concern over continuing reports of ethnically motivated atrocities committed by Amhara authorities in western Tigray, Ethiopia, the agency said. We urge the immediate release of any such remaining detainees and call on relevant authorities to grant international monitors access to all detention facilities. Fighting between the Ethiopian National Defense Forces and the Tigray People's Liberation Front rebel group broke out in 2020. TPLF is an ethnic nationalist military group that wants Tigray to be self-administered and Tigray genocide to be stopped, and the genociders be liable and in peace restored. More than 1 million civilians have been displaced during the war and thousands more have been killed. On Wednesday, Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International released a joint 240-page report alleging the Ethiopian government has committed ethnic cleansing of Tigrayans from western Tigray. The report alleged Ethiopian forces have rounded up thousands of Tigrayans in detention facilities under life-threatening conditions. The groups also accused them of engaging in rape, sexual slavery, and other abuses against the Tigrayans. The State Department backed the report's call for an independent investigation of the situation. Both groups emphasized Ethiopian authorities have restricted independent access, keeping their activities largely concealed from the outside. There must be credible investigations into and accountability for atrocities committed by any party to the conflict as part of any lasting solution to the crisis. We urge the government of Ethiopia to cooperate with the UN Commission of Experts on Human Rights in Ethiopia, the State Department implored. An estimated 83% of the Tigrayan population is considered food insecure, with about 6 million of its people losing access to money, communication, and other resources during the fighting, according to the World Health Organization. Tigray accounts for about 7 million of Ethiopia's 115 million population. Ethnic cleansing is one part of genocide. Reports of mass atrocities in western Tigray. April 8, 2022 press statement. Ned Price, Department spokesperson. The United States reiterates its grave concern over continuing reports of ethnically motivated atrocities committed by Amhara authorities in western Tigray, Ethiopia, including those described in the recent joint report by Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International. In particular, we are deeply troubled by the reports finding that these acts amount to ethnic cleansing. We note with the utmost alarm that thousands of Ethiopians of Tigrayan ethnicity reportedly continue to be detained arbitrarily in life-threatening conditions in western Tigray. We urge the immediate release of any such remaining detainees and call on relevant authorities to grant international monitors access to all detention facilities. It remains our firm position that there must be credible investigations into and accountability for atrocities committed by any party to the conflict as part of any lasting solution to the crisis. We urge the government of Ethiopia to cooperate with the UN Commission of Experts on Human Rights in Ethiopia. Continued reports of atrocities underscore the urgency of ending the military conflict. We strongly support the declarations of a cessation of hostilities by the government of Ethiopia and the Tigray Regional Authority and welcome the news that they have been followed by initial convoys of life-saving assistance. In keeping with these declarations, we renew our call on all armed actors to renounce and end human rights abuses and violence against civilians. The United States reiterates its call for all foreign forces to withdraw from Ethiopia as well as for the regional state authorities to remove their security forces from neighboring regions.
News, Fed. Abiy Ahmed's court orders prosecutors to summon Debretsion, Getachew and 35 others by newspaper, broadcast notice, after ceasefire and truce have been the main death of Tigray people. April 8, 2022 Addis Ababa, judges at the Federal High Court, Lidita Division, 1st Anti-Terrorism and Constitutional Affairs Criminal Bench have today ordered the federal prosecutors to summon 37 defendants in the file name of Tigray's state leader Debretsion Gebremichael, Ph.D., by newspaper and national TV notices. The court's ruling followed after the federal police said they were unable to summon the defendants to appear in court due to security concerns. This was despite repeated issuance of court subpoena, the police said. The plaintiff's attorney did not object to the court's ruling that the defendants be summoned by newspaper and broadcast notices to appear in court. Out of the 62 defendants in the trial file, on 7 January, federal prosecutors discontinued the charges against former senior TPLF officials including Sebet Nega, Muluji, Egziova, Kidusan Nega, Ambassador Abadi Zemu, and Abay Woldu. In the hearing today, the judges adjourned the next hearing until May 16, in order to await the outcome of the public summon notices. If the defendants fail to appear, the trial will proceed in their absence. A total of 17 defendants are in police custody facing charges of a range of criminal allegations including terrorism. They include Keria Ibrahim, former Speaker of the House of Federation, Addis Alam Balima, former Tigray Region Vice President who was also appointed as Director General of Policy Research Institute by PM Abiy Ahmed in 2020, and Dr. Abraham Tekest, former State Minister of Finance and Economic Development. In the hearing today, the judges adjourned the next hearing until May 16, in order to await the outcome of the public summon notices. If the defendants fail to appear, the trial will proceed in their absence. By Marlet Fassel at Marlet Fassel Addis Ababa, judges at the Federal High Court, Lidita Division, 1st Anti-Terrorism and Constitutional Affairs Criminal Bench have today ordered the federal prosecutors to summon 37 defendants in the file name of Tigray's state leader Debretsion Gebremichael, Ph.D., by newspaper and national TV notices. The court's ruling followed after the federal police said they were unable to summon the defendants to appear in court due to security concerns. This was despite repeated issuance of court subpoena, the police said. The plaintiff's attorney did not object to the court's ruling that the defendants be summoned by newspaper and broadcast notices to appear in court. Out of the 62 defendants in the trial file, on 7 January, federal prosecutors discontinued the charges against former senior TPLF officials including Sebet Nega, Muluji, Egziova, Kidusan Nega, Ambassador Abadi Zemu, and Abay Woldu. In the hearing today, the judges adjourned the next hearing until May 16, in order to await the outcome of the public summon notices. If the defendants fail to appear, the trial will proceed in their absence. A total of 17 defendants are in police custody facing charges of a range of criminal allegations including terrorism. They include Keria Ibrahim, former Speaker of the House of Federation, Addis Alam Balima, former Tigray Region Vice President who was also appointed as Director General of Policy Research Institute by PM Abiy Ahmed in 2020, and Dr. Abraham Tekest, former State Minister of Finance and Economic Development. In the hearing today, the judges adjourned the next hearing until May 16, in order to await the outcome of the public summon notices. If the defendants fail to appear, the trial will proceed in their absence. It is to be recalled that in March last year, the federal police told a federal court that Keria was already released from detention. But in May of the same year, she was taken back to police custody after refusing to testify against her co-defendants. She told the court that she had never agreed to testify against the defendants. "I told the prosecutor from the beginning. I never agreed to be the prosecutor's witness," she said. Background: initially, there were only 20 former and current TPLF leaders including Shivad Nega and Keria Ibrahim who were detained and were appearing in federal court in Addis Ababa. They made their first appearance on January 15, 2021. The police accused them of organizing an illegal group to overthrow the constitutional order, attacking the Northern Command, inciting youths to fight, looting fuel depots, and killing several members of the defense forces. The Federal Police Criminal Investigation Team also alleged that they had been involved in unconstitutional activities related to creating connections with different foreign countries, fundraising for war, shooting rocket-propelled grenades at airports in Gondar and Bahir Dar, and other crimes, charges all the accused deny. The federal court has since issued arrest warrants for the remaining TPLF military and political leadership and separated the files into the two groups, military and political leadership of the regional state. The arrest warrant include against the first defendant Debrecen, who is currently based in Mekelle as president of the regional state, and Getachew Reda, advisor to the president and TPLF executive committee member. Prosecutors filed terrorism charges against all the 62 defendants on 23 July 2021. Only 6 of them have since been released. The salt breeze came across from the sea.
Africa, Ethiopia, peace and humanitarian aid to avert a preventable famine that is wiping out the population of Tigray. Adigrat, Agencia Fides, the aid that manages to arrive following the military truce promoted by Prime Minister Abiy, see Fides, 25 March 2022, is not changing the lives of the besieged people and all the services of basic necessities is lacking: food, medicine, all forms of communication. Salaries have been blocked, banks closed, there is no free movement to and from Tigray. This is what Monsignor Tesfaselassie Medhan, Bishop of the Catholic Eparchy of Adigrat, announces, on the devastating genocidal war that has been underway in the Ethiopian region since the 3rd or the 4th of November 2020. The Eparchy, through a pastoral letter sent to Fides, addressed all the partners of the international community and United Nations agencies and launched its appeal for a rapid intervention of humanitarian aid in favor of millions of people who are dying from the famine this war is fueling. This devastating crisis is beyond all imagination: genocidal massacres of civilians, rape and gender-based violence, looting, fires, destruction of homes, places of worship, schools, health facilities. Everything has been destroyed. According to the UNOCHA report of November 15, 2021, continues Monsignor Medhan, 1.7 million children across Tigray have been deprived of education in these 2 years. The prelate calls for the withdrawal of the occupation forces in order to allow the return of internally displaced persons to their villages and a peaceful dialogue to put an end to the crimes in progress. We are still shocked and horrified by the acts of brutal crimes that killed 11 people, including 9 people from Tigray, who were burned alive on March 3, 2022 in the Benishangul Gumuz region. It is tragic and unacceptable to see mothers, children and adults dying every single minute because they are deprived of the right to life and the basic services given to them by God. Ours is a further appeal to all interested and competent international communities. Differently, the world is preparing to see piles of human bodies in the Tigray region, victims of a preventable famine. At this critical time, we desperately call on the international community to take swift action to save millions of people in Tigray from death before it reaches an irreversible level. In the pastoral letter, the Eparchy invokes peace for the suffering population of Tigray, Ethiopia and the world, and thanks all those involved. Individuals, institutions, governments, who are working tirelessly to bring a glimmer of hope to the population. In a recent report by OCHA, it is noted that health services have been provided to more than 26,500 people in the Ethiopian region in 1 week, but an estimated 3.9 million people need health care. GF Agencia Fides, 7 April 2022.
Ethiopia, rights watchdogs name perpetrators of Tigray atrocities Thursday, April 7, 2022. They said, "We will erase you from this land." A new Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International report on crimes against humanity in Western Tigray zone of Ethiopia has named 3 individuals as responsible for some of the war crimes committed against civilians in the Western Tigray region. The report titled, "We Will Erase You from This Land," a phrase coined from the harrowing testimony of a victim of forceful eviction, shows how simmering tensions in western Tigray comprises the findings of a 15-month research of medical and forensic reports, court documents, and interviews of over 400 victims of the clashes, including those who fled to Sudan. It names Colonel Demekazudi, the deputy administrator and head of security of the Western Tigray Zone, Dejene Maru Shalaka, the commander of the 2nd Battalion of the Gafat Brigade, Amhara Special Forces, and Bile Ayalu, believed to be an intelligence officer based in Humera, as the main persons who should be held accountable for crimes under international law for their roles in facilitating war crimes of murder, torture, sexual violence amongst others. Speaking to the East African, Ms. Letitia Bada, the Horn of Africa director at HRW, called for an independent probe on their individual command roles to determine the direct involvement in the documented crimes. "We call on the Ethiopian government to immediately investigate them and suspend them from their positions of power where they continue to commit crimes against the civilians," Ms. Letitia said. Given the gravity of the crimes documented in the report, both HRW and Amnesty International have further called on the International Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia, set up by the UN Human Rights Council recently, to include events in Western Tigray since November 2020 as part of its investigations.
Rights report documents atrocities in Ethiopia's Tigray region. Catholic officials in Addis Ababa welcome ceasefire agreed by the Tigray People's Liberation. Catholic sources from Ethiopia have corroborated a report by two international human rights groups detailing widespread abuses in the western part of the Tigray region, at detention camps across Tigray. Many former detainees held at sites run by the Amhara forces and Fano militias died as a result of torture, denial of medical care, and lack of food and water. The Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International report was published April 6, days after the government announced a humanitarian truce to allow relief aid to reach thousands of local people at risk of starvation. Catholic officials in Addis Ababa welcomed the ceasefire, which the Tigray People's Liberation Front agreed to uphold. The report said Western Tigray officials and security forces from the neighboring Amhara region, with possible participation of Ethiopian federal forces, have systematically expelled several 100,000 Tigrayan civilians from the region using threats since 2020. Authorities restricted movement, humanitarian assistance, speaking the Tigrinya language, and access to farmland. Crops, livestock and equipment were looted. Other abuses documented include unlawful killings, sexual violence, mass arbitrary detention, pillage, forcible transfer and the denial of humanitarian assistance. Ethiopian authorities have steadfastly denied the shocking breadth of the crimes that have unfolded and have egregiously failed to address them, said Kenneth Roth, executive director of Human Rights Watch. A church source who could not be named for security reasons told Catholic News Service, "It's a very good report of what is going on in Western Tigray, but the presence and abuses of the Eritrean government in the region should be highlighted. The style of concentration camps and extrajudicial executions is the Eritrean government's style. Some people say those responsible for the detention camps are the Eritrean military and security forces." Western Tigray is a fertile administrative area in Tigray region, but its boundary and the identity has been the center of disputes since 1992. 2 weeks into the Tigray conflict, a Western Tigray came under the control of Ethiopia's National Army, allied forces and militia from
Ethiopia, Daily Scoop, Tigray sees 8-fold increase in pervasiveness of scabies, UN, Addis Standard, Addis Ababa. The latest humanitarian update from the UNOCHA revealed, the pervasiveness of scabies continues to be a major concern in Tigray, with cases increasing 8-fold, from 384 cases identified at the start of the year to more than 3,100 identified cases during the reporting week. Most cases are recorded among internally displaced people (IDPs) at displacement sites. Despite ongoing efforts to respond to the increased scabies cases, the situation remains challenging, hindered by compounding issues such as overcrowding and poor living conditions, and lack of effective medications. So far, health partners have been responding to the situation mostly at IDP sites in Mekelle, Adwa and Shire, through awareness-raising campaigns. Partners used expired permethrin ointment as a remedy alongside other inefficient treatments as no alternative drug supplies are available. While sufficient healthcare response is essential to end the outbreak, scaling up of water, sanitation, and hygiene wash, healthcare services and improved living conditions at IDP sites, as well as strengthening medication delivery to Tigray are key to contain this issue in a more durable manner. In Afar, humanitarian partners reached more than 62,000 people with food assistance in Afar and more than 7,700 people with medical consultations during the reporting week. Needs assessment visit conducted in Afdira and Silsa Gaiha IDP sites, where there are currently 6 sites managed by humanitarian partners in the 2 Waridas, with a total of more than 34,000 people. While limited shelters and non-food items (NFIs) provided to the IDPs, a huge gap persists with provision of food, shelter, drinking water, sanitation and hygiene services, education service, primary health care, and NFIs, including dignity kits for women and girls, are urgently required. In Amhara, humanitarian partners reached more than 726,000 people with food assistance in Amhara during the reporting period. However, the situation along areas bordering Tigray, namely in Wag Hamra, North Wello and North Gondar zones, remains volatile. Several locations remain hard to reach for partners' operations, including Abageli, Sajabji Kebalis as well as some parts of Zikwala Kebalis in Wag Hamra zone, large parts of Kobo in North Wello zone, and in Adi Arakai in North Gondar zone.
Confusing news of food aid reaching Ethiopia's Tigray, Afar regions. Secretary-General reiterates call to restore public services. The following statement was issued today by the spokesman for UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. The Secretary-General welcomes the news that trucks with food assistance and fuel have reached Tigray and Afar following the declaration of the humanitarian truce. The Secretary-General calls on all parties to keep the momentum and to follow through on their commitments to facilitate the provision of humanitarian assistance to all people in need. He reiterates his call for the restoration of public services in Tigray, including banking, electricity and telecommunications, as well as commercial access. The United Nations reiterates its unwavering commitment to support a peaceful and prosperous future for all Ethiopians. But this empty lunch is sweeping out the people of Tigray. Tube argues the genocide era have to be liable for their violation of human rights and waging genocide on the people of Tigray.